Petroleum Commission Act that came into force, the local content bill was passed, and then the much-awaited exploration bill. Have we done enough, in your estimation?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be on this very important show, and I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate you.
Thank you.
And this program for the award.
Thank you.
That was bestowed on you. I have watched you closely, but also from afar, and I've been impressed by your dedication to work. I see that you enjoy this work. You do it with passion.
Thank you.
And the professionalism you often display, and you continue to set higher standards, for other journalists out there. I hope that in due course, the standard of journalism in Ghana will become the envy of the world.
Thank you, Minister. And also kudos to our entire team, the technical guys, the producers, Wendy, Nanekwa, all of you. Thank you very much. Richard, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yes, but coming to your question, I think that it's essential that for a country that has just discovered this important resource, oil and gas resources, to understand that the resources will not by themselves translate to benefit for the citizens unless the managers of these resources deliberately develop the necessary appropriate policies, develop the structures and the institutions, and also ensure that these resources are managed efficiently. That is how resources, once extracted, can translate to tangible development outcomes for the people. And therefore, the government of Ghana, following the discovery of oil and gas in commercial quantities in 2007, particularly in the Jubilee field, or what we call the Jubilee field, decided to put in place these institutions and structures, because the lessons from other countries that have not built a political economy around oil, show that these resources can become a curse to the nation. You have abundant resources and yet you continue to live in abject poverty. You have abundant resources and yet your people are suffering. There is no good drinking water for them, no electricity, no beds in the hospitals, etc., etc. And therefore, those lessons that are there for all of us to see somehow guided Ghana's attempt to take a different path, to take a different journey of ensuring that for Ghana, our oil and gas resources will benefit the people, and therefore decided to put in place this legislation and the appropriate policies to guide the development.
Are they sufficient?
I think that you are never going to have sufficient, laws and policies, because the management of resources such as oil and gas is an evolving one. It's not an event. It's a process all the time, and therefore, as the environment changes, you will have to also change your policies, review your legislation, so that you are able to keep, with times, with changing times. And therefore, I would not say they are sufficient. Even at this level of the development of our industry, there are still laws and regulations. For instance, we have been talking about the need to have a gas act, which will be dedicated to the development and the management of the primary and secondary gas market, as well as support us to deploy gas infrastructure and ensure that gas becomes integrated with our economy. We continue to have institutional overlaps between institutions that are playing roles around gas development. We need to be able to streamline these institutions. And therefore, there is no way one can ever say that the legislations and the policies are sufficient. You are going to continue to bring in new legislations as the times demand that.
One of the things we're cautioned against as a country was the Dutch disease. Would you say we have managed to, have we sufficiently run the affairs of the oil and gas industry so that we have not contracted the Dutch disease?
Well, the Dutch disease comes in different forms. we have what we call the exchange rate effect. So that is where a country receives, large amount of foreign capital in US dollars, in the British pound sterling, which leads to the real appreciation of your local currency, and thereby making your exports non-competitive. This will lead to the collapse of your export base. In other words, local industries that produce for exports. And that is one manifestation of the Dartey disease. I believe you know that in developing countries, manufacturing and agriculture suffer. And if you look at history, recent history of Ghana, agricultural growth has not been good.
You mean agriculture's contribution to gross domestic product?
Yes, manufacturing has actually been declining. And so to say that we are not with that disease is to beg the reality. But I also want to say that it is too early yet. Ghana is a frontier country. We started producing oil barely 6 years ago. And so the amount of oil we produce and the amount of foreign capital we generate from the sale of oil is not that big, relevant relative to Nigeria or Equatorial Guinea or Angola, so as to upset the value of our currency. And you know that the local currency has been stable for some time now, indicating that Dartey disease is not yet with us. But there's another side to Dartey disease, which has to do with productivity. We call that the price effect. You see, when you import more foreign goods into your country, you do not develop your local capacity to produce. But this is also because demand increases, aggregate demand, as the economists would say, if more money goes into the market. Now, how do you get more money? Because you are receiving large flow of foreign capital, which is spent through the budget, there is more money going into the economy. So aggregate demand increases. But if your domestic economy is not productive enough to supply, to meet the increasing demand, then you have to resort to imports to be able to meet the gap. And therefore, as you import and import more, the incentive to grow your domestic economy, goes down. And over time, the foreign commodity will overtake your economy. That is another form of Dartey disease because it leads to the collapse of the local economy. In that sense, I will also not say that we are with Dartey disease yet, because as I indicated earlier, even though productivity is low in Ghana, even though Ghana keeps importing and importing more, it is not as a result of increase in aggregate demand arising from the large flow of foreign capital into the economy, because the amount of foreign capital we generate from oil isn't that much
when you compare to the likes of Nigeria and what have you. Now, amidst all the excitement and concerns which greeted the news about discovery of oil, there was one which was unanticipated, which is a threat from Ivory Coast regarding its claim of ownership of the area where the oil was discovered. How has this impacted, the oil and gas regime?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there has been an impact, and I will not say positive impact, because as you know, a number of oil blocks have been affected, and level of activity on this block have slowed down. I know that Hess made a discovery and they were about to submit a plan of development. Then we had that case, and so they have to wait for the ruling. That's still under litigation. They will submit their plan of development. I'm sure you also know that the 10 block, they had to stop further drilling, pending the ruling, and that at the moment they are producing around 50,000 barrels of oil. And once the ruling is done and it's favorable to us, they hope to do some further drilling so they can increase production to around 80,000 barrels. So to say that it is not affecting us, is not true. But at the same time, I will beg that we do not discuss it further because this issue is before the tribunal and the judgment is coming in September. So in order not to prejudice, the effect further, I beg that we will just wait for the ruling.
That's fair. Let's talk about the issue of transparency. And you've been a member of civil society before, and you championed the subject of transparency a lot of the times. You actually even came up with a report, 3 years of petroleum revenue management, as executive director of the as executive director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. As minister, is there anything different? Now you see the bigger picture. Is there more to talk about when it comes to transparency?
I believe that transparency is a value, and Ghana as a country has subscribed to transparency. In our constitution, the directive principle of state policy underscores the relevance of transparency. We have built institutions over the years as a country to deepen transparency and accountability. And we have institutions like Parliament, Shiraj, the Public Procurement Authority. All these institutions were created and are being supported to deepen transparency and accountability. And therefore, the oil and gas industry, which is noted for high levels of secrecy in other parts of the world, was an area that also needed transparency to be rooted, right from the point of contracting through to production and then through to the use of the revenue. And I'm sure you have followed progress as far as the development of the appropriate legislation for transparency in the oil and gas sector is concerned. We have done well. The contracts are out there. Government publishes the revenues that they generate from oil. They publish the projects that are receiving oil money through the budget. And so, yes, there's transparency. And now the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act further deepens transparency by requiring that we apply open and competitive bidding processes in the allocation of petroleum rights. It even makes it mandatory for contracts to be published, oil contracts to be published. And so,
which I know you so heavily push for.
Yes, and we also now have PIAC, the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, which is providing parallel oversight.
Well, the PIAC report which you mentioned has often been poo-pooed by government officials.
I don't think that is true, because if you review some of the recent laws we have passed, as well as the contracts that we've signed with international oil companies, you will see government progressively addressing issues raised by PIAC. And so when the report is out, you may listen to people debating the propriety or otherwise of the content of that report. You may hear people say the report is sensational, it's not factual. But the reality is that it is important to bring out a report which will generate debate and which will guide us into doing what is right, rather than not having a report at all. I know that PIAC needs to improve on the quality of the report. They need to improve on their research.
You have always often questioned the discretionary powers of the finance minister.
Very genuine issues have been raised by PIAC.
You've often questioned the discretionary powers of the finance minister with regards to the allocation of oil revenues, haven't you?
No, but I think that discretion is not, bad. Indiscretion is what is bad. And in order for people not to move from discretion to indiscretion, or do not abuse the discretionary power given them, our constitution is very clear on what we need to do to regulate the exercise of discretion. Article 296 of the constitution, which requires that, persons or authority that exercise discretionary power, must publish by constitutional instrument or a legislative instrument regulations to regulate the conduct of discretionary power. And to that extent, very important legislation which have been made in Ghana now have regulations, the legislative instruments. For instance, in the petroleum industry, we have the local content regulations. We are currently debating the general petroleum regulations with civil society and other stakeholders. We have the fiscal metering regulations, the health, safety and environment regulations are out there. The petroleum revenue management regulations are also being developed. And so, yes, I have questioned the use of discretionary power, but not the use as such, but the abuse of discretionary power. And this is why we have consistently advocated for the appropriate legislative instrument.
And you're certain this administration will not abuse it?
I mean, we are developing the regulations, an indication that we are determined to comply by the constitutional provisions. And this is why I indicated that a number of regulations are being developed. Health and safety, data management regulations, the general petroleum regulations, which also covers licensing for petroleum blocks. The petroleum revenue management regulations are being developed. And so to that extent, yes, we are complying with the constitution, which requires us to have legislative instruments to regulate the conduct of discretion. And so there is no any indication, on the part of this new government to abuse, discretionary powers given them by the legislative frameworks that
we're going to be wrapping up this conversation pretty shortly. I'm with the Deputy Minister of Energy, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam. We're talking about 10 years of oil discovery in Ghana. I need just to talk about this subject because, again, it was one of the critical issues you raised during your time as a member of civil society. You said that I need to because you're now a minister. I need to. Now, in one of your reports, you noted that there had been a demonstration of inefficiency in the use of petroleum revenues, with limited resources having been thinly distributed over projects. You talked about the thin distribution of oil revenues on projects, and for you, it often did not make us see the value of our oil revenues. Is this something you'd continue to push us, even as minister, deputy minister?
Well, I mean, I think that that criticism was well-grounded, and I still stand by that. And this is why the MPP government, when it presented its budget, changed course. Rather than thinly distribute the revenue, the government has decided to focus the oil revenue on a few projects, of the railway project, that is receiving a substantial portion of the money. Then education, the free SHS program is also allocated a substantial portion of the petroleum revenue. And of course, some roads, not more than 10 major roads are also receiving part of the oil revenue. And so in the past, when you had more than 100 projects all receiving little, which was not enough to substantially complete those projects, we have changed course by focusing the oil revenues on a few projects with a view to completing these projects and maximizing the benefits for society and ensuring that Ghanaians feel the impact of the oil revenue that we are generating.
Quickly, in 20 seconds, what's the future after the commercial, after the opening of the 10 oil fields?
I think you are referring to Sankofa Ginyami, because that is what His Excellency the President.
Yes, right.
Yes, that's Sankofa Ginyami.
All right, okay.
I know that Sankofa Ginyami, offers us a lot of lessons. First of all, it demonstrates significant local content and local participation. I have been to the FPSO, and I was thrilled to find that 56% of all the personnel are Ghanaians.
Okay.
I've also noticed that $1.8 billion worth of contracts and subcontracts were awarded to indigenous firms. That is a shift from the less than 10% local spending in the first Jubilee fields to 32% local spending in the Sankofa Ginyami. And so we are making progress as a country. Okay, and to that extent, the next field we will develop, we hope to even go beyond 50%. Equatorial Guinea has just spoken to us. They want to come and find out how did we do it. And so yes, we have challenges as a country, but I tell you, Ghana is a country to watch. And Nana Akufo-Addo is determined to take this country, especially the oil and gas sector, to another level that will see increased production of oil through increased investment, that will see increased Ghanaian participation through the accelerated oil capacity program, which he promised, and that will see increased value addition through the development of the petrochemical industry.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam. He is Deputy Minister of Energy and Petroleum. Join us for 10 years of oil discovery in Ghana. Thank you very much for your time. When we return, I'll speak to John Kuma. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Entrepreneurship and Innovations Plan. I also have with me Asiedu-Dartey. He's a Marketing and Entrepreneurship Lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Legon. And Francis Kofiga is Chief Executive Officer of Dorman Foods. They will be helping us talk about the President's recent $10 million package to support startups. Business and economic analysis program, Business Focus, live here on TV3. So we're going to be talking about the President's $10 million package to startups, to support startups. Now, the package is a government initiative to provide an integrated national support for startups and small businesses. Now, the initiative is also to help address some of the financial challenges that startups and small businesses face in the country. I'm joined in the studio by John Kumar, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Entrepreneurship and Innovations Plan, that's NAPE, and Asiedu-Dartey. He's a marketing entrepreneurship lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, and good to have you in the studio. I'll start off with you, Mr. John Kumar. So what is NEP?
NEP is the National Entrepreneurship and Innovations Plan, and it's basically a flagship program of government to enable and empower entrepreneurs to accelerate job creation. So basically that's about it.
Okay, so that's a mandate to support startups.
To support startups, to empower young entrepreneurs, and to help create jobs.
Are there any specific areas you're looking at supporting? IT, just generally?
Any area that we can create jobs.
So what's this $10 million package? What's it all about?
The $10 million is the seed capital, or let me say government equity contribution. And it's supposed to be leveraged to raise about an additional $100 million from private and public institutions and of course development partners. So government intends to raise enough funds to support young people and to support anybody who has an idea to create jobs and to help build businesses that will last. So
the startup, the seed capital has been given?
Yes, it's captured in the 2017 budget. So government has already provided the $10 million. Now it's our responsibility to raise the additional $100 million through the sources I've talked about.
So how are these monies going to be dispersed?
At the moment, we don't want it to be political in its management. So government is advertising for the PSIP, which is the private sector implementation partner. He is supposed to serve as a consultant in managing the fund and also helping to raise and leverage the funds to the $100 million, and also help set the criteria for those who can apply, what are the criteria, the standards of application, and who should be supported. So that is how it's going to be. The details of when to call proposals will be out very soon after we have selected the private sector implementation partner.
I'm going to come back to you, John Kumar. Let me speak to Asiedu-Dartey. He's a marketing and entrepreneurship lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. So you've heard him. Is this what startups need?
Well, startups need more than that, but they need this as well. So when you learn from other countries that have also done very well with startups, particularly when you look at a country like Israel, somewhere around 1992, Israel did not have so much activity in terms of startups. In 1993, they set up what they call the Yozma Fund. And since then, it has been copied by several other countries. So essentially, the Yozma Fund, they put in about $58 million. That's 1993. And then by 2000, they got about $3.3 billion. Now, usually, when you set up these funds, when startups get this initial amount, they would need to scale. Now, when they are scaling, that's where it becomes problematic, because there's not enough fund to support them when they are scaling. So most of them fizzle out. So what the government is supposed to do is to have that kind of fund, but we also need a lot of venture capital businesses or venture capital institutions, a lot of them. And I think that's the amazing thing that the Israelis were able to do. So you need some kind of VC funds. Government needs to encourage a lot of VCs to come into the marketplace, so that when these businesses want to scale, they're able to scale with the help of the funding that they can get from VCs. That's a funding part of it.
Have we established that here in Ghana, what startups needs most is finance?
No, that's not the point I'm making. But startups needs, I think the very first thing is that we don't have a culture that supports entrepreneurship in this part.
I mean, that's what I was just going to find out. Is it the main thing startups need in this country, finance? Is it?
No, that's not the main thing. But they need finance when they are scaling. When they are scaling, so when they are starting, the culture is bad. When they are scaling, they will need a lot of finance.
So John, when do you hope to begin this?
Well,
when do you hope to get the private sector implementation partner?
Let me just correct an impression and we move on. The NEP project is not just about the fund. The fund The fund is just one aspect of about 4 or 5 pillars that the National Entrepreneurship Innovation Plan is
looking at.
The fund is just the youth enterprise support, like he's saying.
Right.
Once you take them through incubation processes and you have groomed them and supported them to be on their feet and they need to scale up, that is when you have to provide the funding.
Right.
But there is other aspects of the program that assist young people to go through incubation processes with the business plan that they submit. And as part of the incubation process, they go through a lot of training and technical support. And sometimes even government also have something we call industrial subcontracting arrangement as part of this NEP project. So if he's starting a project that can feed into one district, one factory, or it is possible to link them to maybe a partner abroad. We are not looking only in Ghana, but also empowering young people to go international and global. So we are not just looking at giving you money, but depending on the idea that you come up with, how can we help you to scale up? Sometimes you don't even need the money. All you need is a strategic partner. And that's what government has to do through the NEP program, to introduce you to strategic partners who may come in with their own investment to scale you up. So what we encourage young people to come up with, or anybody who has business idea, is to be very innovative in your thinking and make sure that the project you want to undertake will have mass impact on job creation and is sustainable. If you do that, you qualify for support.
So NEP essentially takes over from YES, which is the Youth Enterprise Support.
Yes.
Is it just a change in nomenclature, or there's really going to be a difference in what they do?
There's a huge difference, but of course they are all geared at or targeted at job creation for the young people, except that the NEP is broader and expanded vision as compared to the YES. Youth Enterprise Support basically focused on young people between the ages of 18 and 35. But we believe that the idea to create jobs does not rest on age. Somebody may be 60 years or 70 years or 45 years but have brilliant idea about how to create job and expand the economy. Why should you deny such a person assistance because he's above 35 years? So we want to incorporate every age group who has an idea to create job into this concept. That is why we are changing it from youth focus when it comes to who can create a job. Even though we know eventually it will still be the young people who will benefit when all the jobs are created. But the ability to create a job should not be centered solely on age. Because somebody like KFC, McDonald was over 60 years when he brought the idea of KFC. And now he's all over the world, globally. So if we have somebody in Ghana who has a concept like McDonald and wants to go all over the world, are we saying he can also qualify for government assistance?
And you're saying, as a matter of emphasis, that this is going to be free from political manipulation?
It is. And you see, because government wants to scale the seed fund, and we want to bring in private equity and private funding, we have to be as professional as possible. That is why the first step after the launch is to look for the PSIP, the private sector implementation partner, who then comes in to serve as a consultant. And then they will set the criteria. What government will do is to help with the monitoring and making sure that the standards are being respected. The aim of government is to create jobs. And we want to do that irrespective of who has the ideas. So it is strictly going to be business. And of course, it doesn't also exclude those who are politicians and have business ideas. Everybody qualifies. The quality of your idea and your ability to create job is what we are focusing on.
Shelter, you are a marketing and entrepreneurship lecturer. You've been listening to him. Does this whole idea, does it require some shelter?
Well, the idea sounds good. You see, the problem that I have is with regards to when we want to encourage entrepreneurship, it's a whole ecosystem. And so we should solve it at a point where the entire ecosystem is being targeted. So not just one part of the ecosystem, but I think it's gone beyond to say that they are going to bring in private people. Usually in countries where entrepreneurship has been encouraged largely, you have these venture capital firms being encouraged to come and set up in the country. So when you look at, I think Israel is the best example we've seen in the world so far. By 1993, there were no VC firms in Israel. None of them. And these VC firms are independent companies that really, in spite of who is in power, they want to make money. And because they want to make money, they are bent on helping these young entrepreneurs that they put money in their businesses to be able to kind of scale their businesses. So, but I don't really know, I don't know if they have a connection about how to now encourage a lot of VCs and angel investors in this part of the world, you know.
An idea to bring in a venture capitalist, angel investors?
Yes, and basically that's the idea, you know, and the NEP is not to replace venture capital fund. We already have venture capital fund. We are also already establishing the Exim Bank. We are establishing the export promotion fund. There are so many other funds available at the moment as we speak. NEP is just to focus on startups, build you up and train you to be an entrepreneur. Once you are there, the ability to scale up and to bring in venture capital funds, it's vast and it's not limited to just one program. It is an integrated system of job creation that will not focus on just what is available at NEP. Once you are able to do, or once you are able to attain a certain capacity to perform, like I said, it is also our responsibility to even link you to a strategic partner, either locally or internationally, or to recommend you to other GIF. We now have the Ghana Infrastructure Fund. We have the Exim Bank. We have the Venture Capital Fund. So several funds are available to assist you, even if you are looking at government circles. And then we also have the private equities, as he speaks about. If government is able to expose you to various markets based on your strategic business plan or what you want to do to create jobs, we can just link you to any strategic investor who also has money and wants to do something in Africa. So it is not just one specific focus that we have with the NEP, and it's not exclusive of other available possibilities.
What are the timelines? When are you looking at getting your PSIP? When are you hoping to start
the adverts for the PSIP should be in graphic either tomorrow or the next day. We are giving ourselves up to a month to select the strategic partner, and then we'll start rolling out for proposals, calling for proposals. The objective is to help at least 5,000 startups to go through 10 regions. If you are supposed to put about 500 based on various categories for selection, 500 startups in each region, that gives about 5,000, and that's the minimum we should do. And then, like he's saying, we need to create the environment and culture for entrepreneurship. But that is the role of NEP. We have to consistently encourage our young people. At the moment, we have entrepreneurship as a course only at the tertiary level. There should be a way to even start it at the basic level to incorporate the idea of creativity and entrepreneurship and how to become yourself employed person, even at the basic level, for people to understand that you don't go to school to be employed, but you can go to school and become an employer and create your own ideas. We call something ideation. After the ideation processes, then you can take you through incubation and help your ideas to build up to become a successful business.
Do you have any program in place to be able to track or measure the efforts that you're making?
Definitely. The baseline audit has been done, and we know the problem of lack of jobs in this country. And we know the public sector is already choked. And we know that the only way we can reduce unemployment, at the moment we are told that only less than 10% of those who graduate annually from all our tertiary institutions find job in the public sector. So the 90%, what are we doing about them? How many of them are we able to assist to be on their own? And that is what we have to be able to measure, that by next year or two, we should be able to say that 50% or out of the 90% who were not found, who didn't find space in the public sector, are now on their own and have been trained to be able to even employ other people who are coming up. So we have measurable points to indicate whether we are making impact or not.
Shelter, let me take your concluding remarks on this.
Well, I think that when you look at the whole issue about entrepreneurship and creating a good entrepreneurship culture, usually you would ask yourself, maybe 10 years ago, if you told your mom that you wanted to play football, or 20 years ago, if you told your mom you wanted to play football, she'd probably say that, you know what, focus on your education. forget about the football. Then recently we had a few footballers earning so much, and now your parents will tell you, you know what, add education to the football. I think that we need to get to a point as a nation when it comes to entrepreneurship, so that when you tell your parents that, look, I want to start a business, because I teach students, and it's so disheartening that students do projects in class and they want to start a business with it, but their parents will tell them that, look, forget about this. So I think that as a nation, we need to come to a point where we actually encourage people to go out there and then start something.
All right, I've got to say a big thank you to you. Asiedu-Dartey is a marketing and entrepreneurship lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Legon, and also to you,